Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Two Computers Short of a Man Cave. So, as some of you might be aware, I'm going to be becoming a father quite soon, and I wanted to have a computer inside the house to work from home so I could be a bit closer to my wife and child. So I've installed a nice screen, keyboard and mouse in what would have been the breakfast bar, and I needed a relatively compact and fast PC. So for the bargain price of about £90, I got this on eBay. This is a Dell Precision T1700 workstation. As you can see, it's pretty small. It came equipped with a Haswell based Xeon quad-core processor at around 3.5 GHz, assuming it's in good enough health, and it would have been manufactured in around 2014, so it's around about the 4th generation Intel Core era. It also has 16 gigs of DDR3 dual channel memory, an 800 gig SATA SSD, 2TB traditional hard disk and an Nvidia Quadro K620 graphics card, which, although not amazing for games, is actually pretty decent for most of the Adobe stuff that I work on. Now, as I just mentioned, I've already been using it for work, and it's mostly great apart from the sound of the fans. The noise of the fans is just doing my head in. It's like the tower's going into panic mode. I mean, it's getting on for about 6 or 7 years old now, and normally I would suspect the heatsink in here is either full of dust, or the fan is failing, or the heatsink paste had dried up. But I already checked for dust and it's pretty clean in there, so it's likely to be one of the two other things. Let's take it apart and have a little look inside, shall we? I always love how easily these Dell systems come apart. You just lift this little lever here, and the side comes off. Next you'll want to take the front off. And to do that, you just need to lift these 3 little clips here, here, and finally the one in the middle here. It should just pop off. I'm pretty sure this isn't a standard upgrade path. Well, we can already get at the CPU fan, but I'd like a bit more space, and I'd also like to check if I can upgrade the RAM in this. So I'm going to need to remove the hard drive and optical bay. To do that, I'm going to need to push this lever backwards. Attach the cables to the optical drive, and then the drive cage should just lift out of the way. I'm going to need both hands for this. I'm just going to lay it gently down the side there. And here we can see that there are only 2 sockets populated with RAM. So I happen to have this matched pair of 4GB DDR3 1600, and I'm going to insert them in those slots. To do that, I'm going to first part the retention clips, like so. Then you'll need to align the little nodule there and put the RAM in the slot. You can't put them in the wrong way around. You can, but if you force it, it will break them. And push down firmly either side until the clips pop into place. Now we turn our attention to the CPU heatsink. First of all, we need to remove this plastic shroud, so I'm just going to pull those apart and lift that off like so. Also, I'd like to point out actually that at some point Dell decided to put these much weaker, lower style heatsinks on. These are much more noisy, I find, than the old style ones. So to remove the heatsink, there are just these 4 screws, and I will start unscrewing them. I like to listen for the threads to pop as I'm undoing it, so I know that they're out. There you go, there's one, and I always work diagonally. I find it applies less stress to the assembly. 2. And away it comes. Just squeeze the little connector and pull it out, and then lift off the heatsink. This paste is It's barely coming off in my fingers, it's very dry, so I'm just going to give that a clean off and then apply some new paste. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to try a little rubbing alcohol just to take that off. Coming off beautifully, look at that. Try not to get any down on the motherboard and processor. I'm going to just do the same with the heatsink, bit of rubbing alcohol. Got a tough little bit there. Get the screwdriver on it. That's really dried out. I don't think I've seen it that bad for a while. I apologise for my camera work. I'm working in a very small shed. This camera, I just can't. I can't get it far enough away. Everyone's shouting at me to get a GoPro or something. Yeah, I will. I'll get a better camera if I can get up to 100 followers. You may laugh, but this heatsink compound has worked very well for me over the years. Never had a problem with it. Don't know what brand it is. It's just marked heatsink compound. It's not high performance stuff by any means. I'm sure it's better than toothpaste. A little squidge of that. One in each corner. This is feeling. It's getting old. Okay. Just noticed my fingers bleeding everywhere. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Well, it's not really my best job, but I'm sure it's better than it was before. So first things first, I'm just going to put the little fan connector in. And then I'll just put it back together really fast. Okay, so now that I've changed the thermal paste, I'm going to take it through to the house and give it a really nasty workload. So we've got Task Manager and CPU Z open to keep an eye on the system, and I'll also be using Performance Test 10.2 from Passmark in order to keep an eye on the CPU temperature, and I reckon that little spinning motherboard animation will give it just a bit more to do whilst it renders a 1080p video in Handbrake. I'll also set up the second camera to monitor the sound. Hopefully it won't howl like it did before. If you're wondering why the screen capture is chugging so badly, it's actually because I'm using OBS Studio to capture it on the machine itself. Poor thing. I'm just going to speed through this part because it's going to be quite boring for you guys. Well, I think that was a pretty successful test. Let's just remind ourselves how it did sound. It was literally unbearable before, at least now it's a sort of bearable sound of the fans. I suppose the question on some of your minds now is, can this play any games? So first up we've got Far Cry 3, which I thought appropriate for the era of this PC. At 1080p high, with anti-aliasing off, we're getting around 25 frames per second, which isn't quite an enjoyable experience, especially when trying to aim. And at medium settings, we're getting pretty much the same frames per second actually. As I run over this minefield, I must say I'd forgotten how good this game looks for its age. I thought I would also try 720p with a little anti-aliasing in high settings, and we get a much more playable frame rate of around 40 to 45 frames per second. Note that I'm using OBS Studio on this PC itself to sample the video and sound in this case, which is probably sapping around 10 to 15% of its performance. Next up, Descent Overload, which I used to enjoy playing a lot. We're going to start by running this at 720p, and to be realistic, I thought I would turn down the shadows and anti-aliasing. Gameplay is a bit laggy, and I'm finding it fairly difficult to control my ship. We're getting around 25 frames per second, but you'll have to take my word for it because OBS seems to be struggling to sample at a high enough frame rate with this game running. As we can see from the handycam footage, it's actually much more playable than it seems via the capture. I did manage to get it feeling more responsive using 224-768 with anti-aliasing turned on, and I have to say it looks good enough even at this low resolution. I'm a bit out of practice, or I could blame it on this Dell Business keyboard. So I have to say, I'm extremely happy with this machine. For £90, I think this is an absolute bargain. Not only did I get a nice little office PC, but I can also do some casual gaming on here and potentially edit my videos. I'm going to try and edit this video on here. The only issue it really had was that the heatsink paste had dried up, and that was pretty easy to fix as you saw. Next time I'm hoping to make a start on restoring this lovely old Atari 520 ST I got hold of. It's very badly yellowed and I'm not even sure it works at the moment. I shall be checking inside for any swelling capacitors and I suspect I'll have to get the floppy drive working again. I'll also bring you an update about the hedgehogs in the next video, because they should be coming out of hibernation anytime now. I hope you found this interesting and thank you very much for watching. See you next time.